You believe that she is completely focused on you, as if nothing else existed around her. But behind her gestures and gaze, there is a hidden, silent layer, almost impossible to perceive. Even in intimate moments, small comparisons arise without warning. Gestures, words, or even silences carry echoes of the past. The feeling of being unique is mixed with doubt. Am I really different from the others, or just another one in line? This uncertainty, invisible to those who don't pay attention, could be the beginning of a psychological game that few recognize. On the surface, everything seems perfect. Light conversations, laughter, moments of connection that make you feel like you're in control. But behind every word, there is a silent analysis. Comparisons with past stories, judgments that are never verbalized. Little tests happen without you realizing it, from innocent questions to calculated reactions to gauge your response. You feel at ease, but deep down, the environment is one of constant evaluation, a kind of invisible court. That's where the real dilemma lies. How do we know what's real and what's just a reflection of this game of subtle comparisons? Carl Jung spoke about the power of the feminine unconscious and how it manifests in subtle ways in relationships. According to Jung, many comparisons and tests are unintentional. They are automatic patterns created to protect, evaluate, and choose more safely. The feminine unconscious searches for signs, compares gestures and words, often without the woman herself realizing she is doing so. These silent tests are not manipulation, but an instinctive attempt to understand who is trustworthy and who is not. When you understand this mechanism, you stop taking it personally and start seeing the invisible game more clearly. In this video, I'll reveal the hidden patterns and secret tests every woman does, even when she denies it or doesn't realize it. You will understand how these psychological games play out in detail, shaping the relationship without anyone talking openly about it. By deciphering these signs, you stop feeling lost or insecure and begin to see what's really going on. It is an invitation to step out of the illusion and see the real dynamics behind female behavior. If you want to learn how to navigate this hidden territory, stay with me until the end. The answers you seek are here. If you're tired of being just another comparison, now's the time to change the game. Subscribe to the channel now and be part of a space where the truth is discussed without masks or magic formulas. Here, you learn what no one told you about relationships, seeing beyond the obvious and mastering your own presence. Gaining true respect starts with self-knowledge, and each video here is designed to give you clarity and power over your love life. Don't miss the chance to truly grow. Click subscribe, and together we'll uncover what's hidden between the lines of human behavior. Stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover today could completely change the way you see any relationship. From now on, every gesture, word, and silence will take on a new meaning in your perception. What seemed like just a coincidence or insecurity becomes understood as part of a hidden pattern. You'll never look at a couple's dynamic the same way again after this video. Get ready. Once you open your eyes to these invisible games, it's impossible to go back to living on autopilot. But to understand how this invisible game began, we need to look deeper into the female mind. It's easy to believe that comparison doesn't exist, because it's often denied even by those who make it. However, there are deep reasons, psychological and even evolutionary, for this behavior, which is so present and yet so silent. Exploring this universe is the next step for those who truly want to free themselves from naivety in relationships. Let's uncover together why the female mind compares, even when it says, with conviction, that it doesn't. Comparison in the female mind has deep roots in the evolution of our species. Since the beginning of time, women have needed to develop a keen eye to identify who truly offers safety and protection. Natural selection favored those who knew how to choose partners with a greater capacity to provide, protect, and ensure the survival of their children. This instinct, inherited from thousands of years of history, continues to act silently, even in modern relationships. Therefore, comparing is not just a rational choice, but an unconscious survival strategy that is reflected in every detail of relationships. In psychology, unconscious comparison is seen as a constant search for security and status. Even without realizing it, the female mind analyzes behaviors, achievements, and attitudes to assess whether she is with the best possible partner. It is not about superficial materialism, but about an emotional and social protection mechanism developed throughout life. The feeling of security comes not only from affection, but also from the perception of value, yours and the relationship's. Basically, this process is so automatic that many women don't even recognize that they are comparing, but they continue to be guided by it. According to Jung, feminine archetypes such as the lover, the mother, and the queen profoundly influence the desire to find the best possible partner. These archetypes represent unconscious impulses that lead women to seek not only affection, but also protection, leadership, and potential for growth alongside others. The desire to ascend, to live better experiences, and to secure the future is imprinted in these invisible forces of the psyche. This search for the best is neither rational nor conscious most of the time. It is driven by dreams, fears, and references inherited from generations. Understanding archetypes helps decipher why, even when everything seems fine, the urge to compare never completely goes away. It's common to see women discussing the qualities of ex-boyfriends, friends, or even celebrities among themselves, almost as if they were evaluating options in the market. These conversations aren't just gossip. They're moments of comparison to try to understand what they truly value or desire in a partner. The ex who was ambitious, the friend who always listens, or the actor who seems perfect in everything. Each represents a standard of internal comparison. These debates serve to adjust expectations, redefine limits, and even justify current or future choices. Ultimately, this habit reveals how comparison is a constant tool, shaping desires and decisions without us even realizing it. Now that we understand where this impulse to compare comes from, it's time to see how it appears in the little things of everyday life. These patterns aren't confined to theory. They reveal themselves in seemingly simple attitudes, conversations, and choices. Noticing these signs is crucial to avoid being caught off guard or falling into emotional traps that drain your energy. When you learn to identify these manifestations, you gain more control over your reactions and expectations. Let's dive into practical examples together and see how these subtle games play out in everyday relationships. Often, women's tests don't come in the form of direct questions, but rather small provocations or seemingly harmless comments. It could be a subtle comparison to another man, a compliment on a quality you haven't yet demonstrated, or even a silence filled with anticipation. These invisible tests serve to observe your reactions, how you handle pressure, how you respond to the unexpected, how you maintain your posture. Sometimes she just waits for you to notice a change in her mood, or guess what's going on without her having to say anything. These are all silent ways of assessing your self-confidence, your worth, and even your limits, without ever having to say a word. Microbehaviors are even more subtle. She observes your reactions to small situations, compares how you respond to problems or criticism, and challenges your limits in almost imperceptible ways. Sometimes, all it takes is a provocative comment or a joke about something that's bothering you to analyze your emotional security. She may suddenly change her mind just to see if you stand your ground or give in to pressure. Comparing your responses to those of other men, exes, friends, public figures, is also part of this silent evaluation process. Ultimately, all of this is a constant search for signs of firmness, authenticity, and maturity, qualities she seeks without even realizing it. These tests happen automatically because they are part of the unconscious programming that aims to protect women from making bad choices. In psychology, this is seen as a self-protection mechanism. The brain seeks signs of strength, stability, and authenticity in others, almost without realizing it. It's not about manipulating or playing games, but about testing boundaries to ensure you're not getting involved with someone unpredictable or insecure. Often, she herself is unaware of this impulse. It is something inherited, reinforced throughout life by past experiences and family histories. Understanding this dynamic helps you avoid taking things personally and respond more maturely without becoming reactive. I heard the story of a man who only realized he was being tested when it was too late. During the relationship, he didn't notice the little teasing, the subtle comments, or the situations created to observe his reaction. He thought it was all exaggeration or drama, until one day she simply walked away, saying he lacked maturity and poise. It was only later, looking back, that he understood. Each test was a silent call for security, strength, and authenticity. Unfortunately, by not recognizing these signs, he missed the chance to grow and maintain a relationship that had everything to be different. And when these tests finally come to light, or go unnoticed, what do men usually do? Some react with irritation, thinking they are being provoked on purpose, while others simply ignore it, believing it is all in her head. There are also those who feel insecure or pressured, starting to change their behavior just to avoid new tests. More often than not, these responses don't resolve the core dilemma. They just increase distance and confusion in the relationship. Let's now understand what the most common mistakes are and how to respond maturely when faced with these silent games. The instinctive reaction of many men when faced with female tests is to try to please at any cost, justify every action, or even compete with ghosts from the past. In this attempt to prove their worth, they end up losing authenticity and creating an even greater climate of insecurity in the relationship. By trying to conform to what they think she expects, many fail to show who they really are, becoming predictable or even submissive. Others fall into the trap of competing with former partners or friends, seeking approval rather than building genuine respect. These reactions only fuel the testing cycle because they show a lack of self-confidence and clarity about one's own worth. Most men fail these tests because they don't even realize they're being evaluated. They believe it's all spontaneous or just drama. They lack self-awareness and presence to identify when they are reacting automatically, trying to please, or justifying themselves too much. Many people grow up hearing that they need to prove their worth all the time, and they end up carrying this pattern into their relationships. By worrying so much about her approval, they lose their naturalness and stop acting with firmness and truth. The big mistake is not realizing that more than perfect answers, what really attracts is authenticity and inner security. According to Jung, the excessive search for approval arises from unconscious archetypes that shape our behavior, such as the famous nice guy. The nice guy believes that pleasing everyone, avoiding conflict, and always being understanding is the way to be loved and accepted. However, this stance hides insecurity and fear of rejection, leading men to repress their true opinions and desires. By trying to be perfect, he ends up suffocating his own authenticity, becoming predictable, lacking magnetism, and easy to manipulate. What Jung points out is that there is only maturity when a man recognizes his own limits and stops living for the validation of others. Imagine the man who, faced with any test or challenge, is quick to apologize for things he didn't even do, or changes his mind just to avoid conflict. He cancels important commitments, gives in to everything, and accepts being disrespected, thinking that this way he will win her heart. Over time, this submissive attitude has the opposite effect. She loses respect and begins to see him as someone without position or power. The attempt to please, far from bringing people closer, ends up pushing them away and creating a feeling of emptiness and lack of admiration. In the end, the man realizes that putting himself down does not bring true love. It only increases his own feelings of inadequacy. How many times have you found yourself trying to be the best for her, only to find that, in the end, you lost her respect and admiration? The unbridled search for acceptance often leads to the opposite effect. The more you try to please, the less value she sees in you. Respect does not arise from perfection, but from the ability to take a stand, to set boundaries, and to be authentic even in the face of disagreement. When you suppress your own voice to be chosen, you end up conveying insecurity and emotional dependence. In the end, it's worth reflecting. What's the point of gaining physical presence if you lose the respect that sustains any true relationship? But there is a way out, and it doesn't involve being even more reactive or trying to please more than you already do. The true path is not one of automatic reaction, but of awareness of who you are and what you really want to experience in a relationship. You need to get off autopilot, stop acting out of fear of rejection, and start responding with presence and intention. This change begins when you understand your own limits and values and stop seeking validation in every response from her. Only then will you stop playing her game and start creating your own, with authenticity and inner strength. According to Jung, we are all guided by unconscious forces called archetypes, present in the collective unconscious of humanity. On the feminine side, the anima stands out, the personification of the feminine within man, which influences his desires, dreams, and romantic choices. The animus represents the masculine within the woman, shaping her expectations, patterns of choice, and ways of relating to the world. These archetypes dialogue silently, creating patterns of behavior that are repeated generation after generation, even without us realizing it. Understanding the influence of the anima, the animus, and the collective unconscious is essential to seeing why certain feminine games and comparisons seem so universal. Jung said that a woman's unconscious tests a man's authenticity at every moment of the relationship. This is not a planned test, but a natural mechanism. The feminine psyche seeks real signs of presence, strength, and truth in those around her. A woman senses, almost instinctively, when a man is just acting or hiding his real intentions to please. This subtle reading takes place in the details: posture, firmness in words, established limits. All of this is evaluated without conscious effort. Therefore, passing the tests is not about performance, but about being authentic, honest, and true to who you really are. What differentiates an authentic man from a reactive man is the origin of his attitudes and the confidence with which he positions himself in the world. The authentic man acts guided by his own values, limits, and purposes, without depending on the approval or mood of others to feel complete. He responds to challenges calmly and clearly because he knows who he is and what he tolerates. He doesn't change his essence to please or avoid conflict. The reactive man, on the other hand, lives hostage to other people's situations and emotions. He changes his posture, opinion, or energy with each test or provocation he receives. Ultimately, authenticity inspires respect and admiration, while reactivity conveys insecurity and lack of direction. Think of historical figures like Alexander the Great, or iconic characters like James Bond. Neither of them competed for acceptance. They were unique in their presence. These men were not concerned with outdoing others or pleasing crowds, because they were already firm in their own identity. Their stance inspired respect precisely because they did not seek approval. Their choices came from conviction, not from a need for validation. Being unique in this context is not about arrogance, but about quiet self-confidence and clarity of purpose. When you act this way, you stop being just another one in the crowd and become a reference, someone who is remembered, not compared. If comparison is an inevitable dynamic in relationships, the real question is, how can you come out on top of this game? There's no point pretending it doesn't exist or trying to avoid it. Sooner or later, everyone is evaluated, whether they realize it or not. The secret is to shift your focus. Instead of reacting to our expectations, learn to create your own standards and references. When you position yourself with authenticity and firmness, comparison stops being a threat and becomes an opportunity to demonstrate real value. Let's see, in practice, how to turn the tables and make the comparison game your ally. True masculine authority manifests itself in the quiet strength of someone who doesn't need to compete for attention or prove his worth at every turn. Men like this exude a quiet confidence that doesn't depend on applause or constant validation from others. They understand that being unique doesn't require the effort to compete, but rather the courage to be authentic and maintain one's essence, regardless of the environment. The presence of these men inspires respect and admiration because it conveys the message that they are complete in themselves. When you don't feel the need to compete, your value naturally emerges, and that's what makes you unforgettable in the face of any comparison. Leaders like Nelson Mandela, artists like Johnny Depp, or figures like Bruce Lee never had to compete explicitly for recognition. What makes these men stand out is their striking presence, authenticity, and the confidence they have in being comfortable with who they truly are. They don't strive to be the best at everything, but focus on living their truth, regardless of others' opinions. This kind of presence has an immediate impact. It attracts respect, admiration, and even desire, without the need for excessive effort or comparison games. When you focus on being whole and true, you become unforgettable and stand out even among the strongest competitors. Developing natural authority begins by cultivating presence, being fully present in every situation, paying genuine attention to the moment and the person in front of you. Clarity about your own values and boundaries is key. Knowing what you accept and what you won't tolerate automatically instills confidence. Practice self-acceptance daily, recognizing your qualities and also your imperfections, without seeking external approval to feel valid. Men with natural authority are not afraid to express opinions, even if it causes discomfort, because they know that authenticity is more valuable than pleasing. Over time, this posture makes you stand out effortlessly, attracting respect and interest simply by being who you are. Now tell me, Have you ever felt like you lost value just because you tried too hard to prove who you are? Maybe you gave in, tried too hard, or changed your ways just to please, and in the end you felt that respect diminished. How many times have you sought recognition outside, when what you really needed was to look within and trust yourself? This feeling of emptiness and exhaustion is a clear sign that it's time to shift focus, from proving to simply being. Share in the comments if you've ever been through this. Your experience might help other men see their own worth. But not every woman plays fair in this process of comparison and testing. Some, consciously or unconsciously, use the game to manipulate, create competition, or maintain control of the relationship. In these cases, comparison ceases to be just a natural instinct and becomes a weapon of emotional power. Recognizing when this is happening is essential to avoid falling into traps that drain your energy and undermine your self-esteem. Let's now explore how to identify these toxic patterns and how to protect yourself without losing your authority. The dark side of comparison appears when it turns into a power play, and triangulation becomes a recurring tactic. Triangulation is when a woman brings other men into her field of vision, whether by mentioning exes, friends, or even strangers, to provoke jealousy or insecurity. This type of comparison isn't innocent. It serves to test your limits, manipulate your emotions, and ensure that you never feel completely secure in the relationship. By creating an environment of constant competition, she maintains emotional control, forcing you to fight for validation and space by her side. Recognizing this dynamic is essential to avoid being manipulated and to protect your self-esteem in the face of such exhausting games. Signs of manipulation appear in comments that distort reality or make you doubt your own perceptions, a phenomenon known as gaslighting. She may minimize your feelings, tell you that you're overreacting, or turn the tables to make you feel guilty for situations you didn't cause. Another classic sign is when little lies are used to confuse, undermine your trust, or make you emotionally dependent. Sometimes manipulation hides in ambiguous compliments, derogatory comparisons, or sudden mood swings, always keeping you on your toes. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to breaking the cycle, regaining clarity, and regaining control over your own narrative. A common example is when she teases with stories about ex-boyfriends, implying that other men still have importance in her life. Another pattern is to mention mysterious friends without clearly explaining who they are, creating an atmosphere of doubt and constant competition. Veiled threats also appear, such as insinuations that any slip-up on your part could cause her to seek attention elsewhere. These behaviors don't just happen. They're ways to test your worth, undermine your self-confidence, and keep you feeling insecure. Identifying these examples in practice allows you to escape the role of emotional hostage and act more firmly in the face of subtle manipulation. Behind these manipulation games, there's often a deep insecurity in the woman herself, fear of not being enough or of being abandoned. By creating competitive situations or keeping you on your toes, she feels like she's regaining control and protecting her ego from potential rejection. These behaviors can also arise from an unconscious desire to feel valued, desired, or above your partner in some way. Manipulation becomes an attempt to fill internal voids, even if it harms the emotional health of the relationship. Understanding this dynamic protects you from taking on blame that isn't yours and from getting involved in battles that only serve to feed the player's ego. The most powerful tip is to learn to recognize when to leave the game before it destroys your self-esteem. If you realize that the relationship has become a constant battle for validation, marked by manipulation and emotional games, it's time to rethink your role there. There's no point trying to win in a field where the rules are created to always keep you at a disadvantage. Value your peace and integrity. If the price of staying is giving up who you are, leaving may be the greatest act of self-respect. Remember, a strong man is not someone who can handle everything, but someone who knows the right time to say enough is enough and move on. Faced with this veritable minefield of emotional games, the big question becomes, how do you protect your self-esteem and your energy? It's not enough to simply identify the signs of manipulation. You need to develop an internal shield to avoid being shaken. Protecting yourself goes beyond reacting. It requires awareness, self-knowledge, and the courage to set clear boundaries, even under pressure. You don't have to enter every contest or prove yourself all the time. Now let's look at what practical steps will ensure you come out of this in one piece. even when the environment seems hostile. The first technique to protect yourself is to develop awareness of your own worth, without depending on the approval of anyone around you. Avoid comparing yourself to other men. Everyone has their own path, and seeking external validation only fuels the cycle of insecurity. When you notice provocations or tests, practice calm. Take a deep breath, observe before reacting, and stay focused on your limits and principles. The mature answer is to act according to who you are, without trying to compete or prove anything to anyone. The stronger you become internally, the less vulnerable you are to the emotional traps that drain your energy. Setting clear boundaries is essential to avoid getting lost in comparison games. Say no when necessary, and keep your priorities above other people's expectations. Strategic silence is a powerful tool. Not every provocation deserves a response. Sometimes, ignoring it is the most effective way to show self-confidence. Conscious responses come from maturity. Think before you speak, avoid over-justifying, and don't fall into the trap of competing for the spotlight. These attitudes convey inner strength and make it clear that you don't accept being manipulated or tested all the time. Over time, those around you learn to respect your limits, and the dynamics of the game change completely. Try doing a self-awareness exercise. Think about recent situations in which you felt you were tested or provoked in a relationship. Write down how you reacted at the time. Were you reactive, trying to please, over-explaining, or losing your cool? Now reflect on how you could have acted differently, maintaining your boundaries and responding more consciously. This process of analysis is not about blaming yourself, but about training your mind to recognize patterns and improve your responses in the future. Over time, you will realize that the more prepared you are, the less these tests will have an impact on your energy and self-esteem. Carl Jung said that, "He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens." Self-observation is the first step to breaking unconscious patterns that repeat themselves in relationships. By observing yourself honestly, you begin to identify not only the other person's tests, but also your own triggers and automatic responses. This internal perspective gives you the freedom to choose how to act, rather than just reacting to what's happening around you. In the end, those who practice self-observation live with more authenticity, strength, and presence, attributes that no one can take away from you. Now that you understand how the invisible game of testing and comparison works, it's time to change your approach to it. With knowledge comes the responsibility to act differently. There's no point in pretending you don't see it or continuing to play on autopilot. This is the time to take control. Stop being a piece on the board and become the protagonist of your own story. Transformation begins when you stop reacting and start choosing how you want to live, who you want to be involved with, and how far you're willing to go. Let's go together to the final stretch. How to consolidate your mental armor and build stronger relationships without giving up who you are. True power lies in becoming the man she sees as her role model, the one she compares all others to, not because you compete, but because you inspire. This place is not achieved by trying to please or be the strongest, but by being authentic, consistent, and self-assured. When you become your own standard, you create a magnetic field. She realizes that there is no point in seeking better, because there is truth and presence there. Being a benchmark means being remembered not for competing, but for leaving a unique mark that is impossible to replicate. This is how comparison becomes meaningless. When you become the yardstick by which everything else is measured. The principles for becoming a leading man are simple, but they require courage. Don't compete. Don't react automatically. Don't justify yourself all the time. Competing is a sign of insecurity. A true leader inspires without engaging in unnecessary disputes. Instead of reacting to provocations, choose to respond with presence and calm, showing that nothing can get you off track. Avoid justifying yourself. Those who are confident don't need to convince anyone. They simply stay true to their own values. These principles, when applied, differentiate you and naturally place you in the role of reference without forced effort. To truly become a role model, invest in hobbies that bring you pleasure and help you build self-confidence outside of relationships. Having your own goals and working toward personal goals shows that your life doesn't revolve around pleasing or receiving approval from anyone. Maintain an independent social circle with friends and connections that strengthen your identity and broaden your worldview. When you demonstrate passion, purpose, and autonomy, you naturally come to be seen as someone of high value. This independence protects you from the need to compete or justify yourself, and makes you even more attractive to onlookers. Think of someone like Rocky Balboa, who starts out discredited, without prestige or great achievements, but transforms his life by focusing on self-development and discipline. Instead of trying to prove his worth to others, he decides to compete only with himself, facing fears, limits, and internal weaknesses. This journey of self-improvement not only changes the way he sees himself, but also inspires respect and admiration from everyone around him. The transformation happens when the character realizes that he no longer needs external approval to feel complete. In the end, Rocky becomes the true benchmark, a reference of courage, authenticity, and determination, attributes that naturally attract respect and presence. When you become the standard, something fundamental changes in the dynamics of the relationship. She simply stops looking for another reference. The search for comparison loses its meaning because there is someone who not only inspires, but fills the gaps of value, presence, and truth. Being a benchmark isn't arrogance. It's a natural consequence of living with purpose, authenticity, and self-confidence. She realizes, without you having to say anything, that nothing out there is more solid or secure than what she has built by your side. Ultimately, those who become the standard do not fear competition because they understand that where there is originality, there is no substitute. And to close this chapter, I leave you with a practical challenge that you can start implementing today. Understanding all of this is important, but real transformation only happens when you put this knowledge into action. The next step is to move beyond theory and test your posture when faced with comparisons, games, and everyday expectations. Don't wait for change to happen from the outside in. Start acting differently and see the impact it has on your relationships. Now, pay attention to the final exercise. It's simple, but it can completely change your presence and the respect you inspire. For the next 7 days, accept the challenge of living each situation with presence and authenticity. When you feel like you're being tested, practice strategic silence. Not every stimulus deserves an immediate response. Respond calmly and firmly, showing who you are, without falling into the trap of anxiety or the need to please. Reinforce your value without competing. Make it clear through your actions that you don't demean yourself or engage in comparison games. At the end of each day, record your responses and emotions. Notice patterns, learn from your mistakes, and see how your attitude begins to transform your relationships. For 7 days, challenge yourself to practice being the benchmark, not the competitor. In every interaction and testing situation, when provocation or comparison arises, resist the urge to compete or justify yourself. Just maintain your presence and poise. Pay close attention to how she reacts when she sees you're not playing along, not giving in to pressure, and not seeking validation. Record changes in the relationship's dynamics. Notice if there is more respect, curiosity, or even admiration for your authenticity. At the end of the week, reflect on the impact of this attitude and realize how being the benchmark transforms not only the relationship, but also your own confidence. Now, I want to know from you, what was the most invisible test you noticed in your last relationship? Have you ever had a situation where you only realized later that you were being evaluated, compared, or put to the test without even realizing it? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might open the eyes of other men who haven't yet seen these games. Here, every story counts and can be a turning point in someone's journey toward greater awareness and self-respect. Don't be ashamed to expose the truth. Together we grow and transform this game into real learning. If this video opened your eyes, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who also needs this message and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content. Show other men that there is indeed a way out of this cycle of comparison and insecurity. Your attitude could be the first step towards someone's turning point. Here, the mission is to build a group of conscious, authentic, and respected men, capable of seeing beyond the obvious. Turn on the bell and be part of this transformation. The more people awaken, the less room there is for games and manipulation. Remember, when you become the benchmark, all testing becomes meaningless. And that's when you truly take control of your story.